It is being called one of the greatest shows in Defiant wrestling history. It was certainly one of the most consequential, but regardless, Lights Out is now in the books, and we are turning our attention towards the third annual No Regrets. The ReLoaded podcast is on the air. Dave Bradshaw here with James R. Kennedy, and goodness me, what a night that was last Wednesday in Leeds.
It was an incredible night, not only because of all the tremendous matches, the new champions, all the stuff we're going to get to, but Dave Bradshaw, did you see the jacket I was wearing? I mean, that was a thing of beauty. You know,
I could hardly miss it, could I?
Oh, come on, there's no need for cheap shots. You and I both know that we were in awe of what I was wearing. I mean, it was hard for me even to come through that curtain because all I wanted to do was stand and admire myself in the mirror. I mean, that thing was spectacular. I like to call myself a fashionista. Well, I've outdone myself. What a night at Lights Out, but I'm glad the lights were on in the arena because everyone got to see what I was rocking. That jacket. Wow, that jacket.
Only you would open up a podcast by telling people how much you love yourself.
Well, you know, listen, some of the members of the Defiant Wrestling audience are very, very mean to me. So, you know, I have to give myself some self-love sometimes. In a manner of speaking, and I have to talk myself up because when you're bullied like I am, Dave Bradshaw, you know, sometimes all you have is your own self-confidence, and it just so happens I've got it in spades, mate.
Yeah, you are the perennial victim, aren't you? Bullied, you poor thing.
Now you're catching on. I'm glad we see eye to eye on this.
Yeah, I'm sure we do. Well, here's something we're not going to see eye to eye on. I want to talk about two of the most important headlines coming out of Lights Out. Two title changes, two new champions. The first of whom I do not think is a very good choice of representative, to put it mildly, for the Defiant women's title, Lizzie Styles. Now, I've been thinking about this for the past few days, and this has been annoying me greatly, but I know what you're going to say. I know, it doesn't matter what she, as long as she backs it up in the ring, you're going to say all that normal stuff you say. But let me put it this way. Regardless of what she did in the ring, will you at least agree with me that Lizzie Styles, the way she conducted herself when Kanji, who was obviously quite distraught, had to forfeit that championship, the lack of respect, the lack of basic integrity that Lizzie Styles showed, regardless of what her talent is in the ring, was gratuitous, it was completely unnecessary, and it demeaned the women's championship.
But you use that word respect, but I'm going to have to say, respect for what? Because Kanji doesn't deserve respect. She came out there with the sad puppy dog eyes, and she either fabricated or genuinely had, I can't make my mind up yet, an injury, and she wanted to hand over that Defiant Women's Championship. I want to remind you of something, Dave. I want to remind you that this is the second time in Kanji's Women's Championship reign that she has tried to offload that belt to General Amin. Now, the second time she was successful. Listen, I'm going to have to put down Lizzie Styles for 2 victories at Lights Out. One over Kanji mentally and one over Lana Austin physically. Now, you're not going to change my mind on this. Lizzie Styles, the one-woman army, she is without doubt the women's champion that Defiant Wrestling deserves.
Really? What did we do to deserve that?
Oh, come on. I mean, Lizzie Styles is the living embodiment of what a female wrestler should look, sound, and wrestle like. She has everything. She's the full package. Finally, we have a champion to represent that fine women's division that we can all collectively be proud of. Kanji was looking for a way out from day one.
Proud of? The goodness me, the basic lack of class that she showed in taking that championship. Now, we can talk about whether Kanji was legitimately injured or not. I think personally that's a pretty insulting debate to have, but if you want to go down that alley again, we can. But regardless of that, obviously, whether it was a legitimate injury or a crisis of self-confidence. Kanji, for whatever reason, was clearly in distress, she had made a decision that she had no choice but to give up that championship. And rather than graciously allow her to do that and then enjoy her moment in the sun, Lizzie Styles had to rub it in her face constantly, repeatedly, in front of a crowd of people in Leeds and a worldwide television audience. Utterly embarrassing. Not embarrassing for Kanji, embarrassing for Lizzie Styles, embarrassing for anyone who's connected to Lizzie Styles to see the way she conducted herself.
You know what's embarrassing? The fact that General Amin came out there and he had the audacity, the sheer unadulterated audacity to say, okay, Lizzie Styles, the champion that you were challenging against is not medically cleared to compete. But instead of giving you what is rightfully yours, the Defiant Women's Championship, I'm going to make you wrestle, ta-da, Lana Austin. You're going to have to go one-on-one with stunning Lana Austin, who is one of the finest female wrestlers that this country has ever produced. How is that fair? How is it fair that Lizzie Styles came to Lights Out expecting to wrestle Kanji, then when Kanji couldn't wrestle, she didn't get that championship handed to her like she should have. She had to wrestle Lana Austin. So in my mind, yes, I am putting down Lizzie Styles for not one, but two major wins at Lights Out.
Yeah, she won the match against Lana Austin. Fair play, she won that. But since when do we do handouts? Since when do we just give championships away? I mean, it's not something that we've ever done in Defiant Wrestling. Why on earth would you expect that Lizzie Styles should be handed the championship without having to earn it, without having to wrestle a match, particularly when there was someone more than qualified waiting in the wings? Of course, General Amin was going to set up that match if he possibly could. Why would he not insist on someone winning a match to become a champion rather than just be having some kind of coronation without having to do anything?
Well, it's just another example, if you ask me, of General Amin undermining the fabulous array of talent that he has in Defiant Wrestling. I mean, Lizzie Styles, she was ready to hold that championship above her head after weeks, if not months, of getting inside the head of Kanji. It was a masterclass in psychological warfare. That's exactly what it was. She got underneath Kanji's skin and she convinced the then women's champion that she didn't belong in that role. I mean, that is just genius. And instead of recognising that brilliance, General Amin tries to pull the rug from beneath the feet of Lizzie Styles. Well, it didn't work.
You are relentless in your attacks on General Amin. How on earth? We're trying to talk about Lizzie Styles and whether the way she behaved is befitting of someone who's going to hold the Defiant Women's Championship. And somehow, and I guess this is my fault, but I've allowed you to morph this into another one of your critiques of General Amin. How is this about Amin? It is about Lizzie Styles.
Well, General Amin came out and interjected himself in the situation when really he should have sat in the back with all his lollipops that he likes to carry around the place, and he should have watched with the entire wrestling world as Lizzie Styles was rightly handed that championship and she got to parade around the place with all her fans cheering, Lizzie, Lizzie, Lizzie.
All her fans. How many do you think there were?
Oh, there were certainly thousands. Certainly, you know, if not thousands already there were hundreds gathering outside the place. I mean it's just unbelievable. She could barely get to her car to go back to the hotel after the match. I mean, it was insane. The buzz on social media was second to none. I'm telling you, Bradshaw, we have a women's champion that we can all be proud of.
Yeah, you know, people from Liverpool are known for being really popular in Yorkshire, so I'm sure that's absolutely true. Let's talk about the other champion. Let's move on before I totally lose my temper with you here and talk about Rampage. Now, can we at least agree that to see Rampage back with the Defiant World Championship around his waist is somehow just feels right? Does it not just feel good to have that man back as our champion after what was a very weird month with Rory Coyle at the helm?
Oh, it does. You know, I cannot disagree with you on that one. The nightmare is over, at least for now. Rampage, you know, he is if you're going to pick one man to represent your professional wrestling company as the world heavyweight champion, you know, Rampage is tailor-made for that position. He is a wonderful representative for Defiant Wrestling. He was during his first nearly year-long reign as the champion, and I have no doubts that he will be again. Rory Coyle is the antithesis of a representative for Defiant Wrestling. He is everything that Defiant Wrestling fans fear and loathe. And did you see, Bradshaw, the smile on Coyle's face during that match? Now, this was a barbaric no disqualification match. There were weapons, there was brawling on the outside, there was so much going on. And all throughout that match, especially when he was being tortured by Rampage, there was this sick smile all over Rory Coyle's face. It was almost like he was enjoying the pain and suffering. And you and I, at the announce desk, we kept glancing at one another. We couldn't believe it. No human being should react that way to such an assault, but Rory Coyle did. And it seems to me that not only did he get inside Rampage's head, but also he got what he wants. Rory Coyle wanted that violence. He wanted that bloodshed. He wanted that anarchy. It's scary.
I mean, he certainly got what he wanted in the sense that he got a very different version of Rampage to what he got at Magnificent 7, right? I mean, it was a very different match. Granted, there was that no disqualification stipulation, so you might have expected that. But it was, to use Coyle's words, it was the monster Rampage, not the wrestler Rampage, who showed up in Leeds. And maybe that's what had to show up in order to retake that championship. But yeah, in a way, Coyle did what he said he was going to do, which is that he brought out that beast within Rampage. But I mean, we can't describe it as a success for Coyle because obviously he lost the championship. But I wonder whether that's why he was smiling. You know, in Rory Coyle's twisted mind, it was some kind of a victory that he brought that out in Rampage. And I don't know whether it's because of that he was smiling, whether he enjoyed the pain. I mean, I'm not going to try and second guess the mind of someone like Rory Coyle, but maybe all is not lost for Coyle in terms of what happened last Wednesday, because in a way he got what he wanted, but we all got what we wanted, more importantly, and Rampage back as our champion.
Yeah, I would have to say that now Defiant Wrestling, with no regrets on the horizon, and obviously in that massive rumble, we're going to establish a new threat for Rampage somewhere down the line. You know, I would imagine that things will get back on an even keel, because during that month or so that Rory Coyle was the Defiant champion, it was chaotic around here. I mean, you saw the knock-on effect. I've been having a pop at general, left, right and centre for various reasons. But I believe there was a knock-on effect of Rory Coyle as the champion. He is like a cancer that just afflicted everything around him. And on the subject of that Defiant Championship and whether Rory Coyle is gutted or not that he lost the thing, yes, of course he'll be disappointed because he enjoyed the power trip of having that control over Defiant Wrestling's prized possession. But I don't think material wealth really gets this guy going. I believe that through that entire month, with the funeral that he dedicated to Rampage, with all the torturous speeches that he made everyone sit and listen to, quite frankly, it was like a sermon. I believe everything, it's all the process that gets Rory Coyle going. More than holding that championship, he just loved having power and dominion over everyone. We had to listen to him. He was the centre of attention. Now he's not the centre of attention. I dread to think how Rory Coyle will try and get that spotlight again.
All right, now if you want to catch what happened at Lights Out in terms of those two title wins, so Lizzie Styles becoming the women's champion, Rampage regaining his Defiant world title, you can catch the replay on Access Defiant at access.wearedefiant.com. If you're a new customer, of course, you get that 30-day free trial, so you'll be able to watch it all for free. And we do very much encourage you to do so, because two historic moments there in Leeds last Wednesday. But those weren't the only highlights of what was a stunning night of action in West Yorkshire. Now, let me list you 5 people, and then you can tell me what they've got in common. Pac, Mark Haskins, Martin Kirby, Joe Hendry, and Gabriel Kidd. What do they all have in common last Wednesday?
You want me to guess?
I would hope it's obvious.
Well, like all 5 of those men personally came up to me and said, James, that jacket you're wearing is absolutely amazing. Where did you get it? Where can I get my hands on that? But aside from that, I also believe that all 5 of those individuals were victorious at Lights Out.
Yes,
am I right?
They were. Big wins, all of them, in singles matches, in many cases grudge matches against people who they've had long-standing issues with. Who out of those 5 do you think had the biggest night? For whom out of the 5 names I just listed is victory most consequential?
Well, I'm tempted to say the internet champion Martin Kirby, simply because, the rules were changed in this one. Martin Kirby was supposed to face Lucky Kid. Due to circumstances admittedly out with Defiant Wrestling Management's control, Lucky Kid went down with injury. They scrambled to find a last-minute replacement. I was very impressed with the debuting Sean Custom, by the way. But Kirby rolls on. This is I talk about champions we can be proud of. Martin Kirby is right up there. The internet champion, he holds that championship with distinction. I'm going to have to say Martin Kirby. Apart from that, there is another man that comes to mind, and that is a man who fought off quite a stern challenge. El Phantasmo was running around with bold words on last week's Loaded. Now Phantasmo has to lick his own wounds. This could be a mentally damaging loss for him. Pac gets the win, and you have to believe, Dave, that Pac will be in the running for a championship match at some point in the future. He's been flawless since he came into Defiant.
Well, we'll get to Pac in just a second, but on the subject of Martin Kirby, we've had a question about this, and again, thank you everyone for your questions and thoughts coming out of Lights Out. You can join that conversation online using the hashtag #WeAreDefiant. Kimmy has texted in. Kimmy is a regular contributor to the show, and he's asking what next for Martin Kirby after his impressive victory against Sean Custom, who and by the way, Kimmy agrees with you that Sean Custom had made a hell of an impression in his Defiant debut. So where does Kirby go? Kirby, again, successful on the big stage. Yes, he won't defend the championship on Loaded, which we have pretty clearly defined opinions on that we've talked about before. But whatever you think of that policy from our internet champion, he is successful when it matters. Who does he turn his attention to next, or who will be the next to target him?
Well, I think there's going to be a very long line of challengers, because everyone realises that since Martin Kirby became the internet champion, that the prestige of that title has just gone up and up. But before that, before Martin Kirby does have another challenger, or before Defiant Wrestling have another challenger in mind for Martin Kirby, whoever it is, I really think that Martin Kirby deserves a little celebration. I think first and foremost, the man needs a custom championship befitting of his image. I mean, we could think about it. We could have a championship belt almost as shiny as that beautiful head that he has. And also, on top of that, I think that Martin Kirby, he simply must have a day named after him. A holiday, if you like. A bank holiday, if we're being smart about it. Make the country happier, right? Especially at this kind of time with all that's going on. Martin Kirby could be the leader that we all want, and some people didn't even know they wanted. I mean, he is doing such special things as internet champion. He is...
Well, look, to be honest, Martin Kirby takes 29 out of every 30 days as a holiday because he refuses to defend the internet title on Loaded. So he's already got the vast majority of the year as a holiday that he can name after himself if he wants to. So I don't really know why we need to add any more to that, do we?
Oh, wow, when people say I'm the bad guy of this double act. But no, I think that Martin Kirby, he deserves a celebration. I think General Amin should get down on his hands and knees and say thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Kirby, because you pulled me out of a hole and you arguably had the match of the night at Lights Out against the debuting Sean Custom. What a way to open a pay-per-view. Mr. Kirby, Mr. Custom, the Internet Championship on the line. And there's a funny point. Martin Kirby beat Sean Custom, and I'm talking about a customised Internet Championship for him. Isn't it funny how these things work out? I love life sometimes.
You are hilarious, aren't you? You're a real comedian.
I'm glad you're noticing. I'm glad you're noticing.
You know what? Why don't you quit wrestling and go and join the stand-up comedy circuit?
You know,
That would be nice.
if
That
I-
would suit me.
If I didn't know any better, Dave Bradshaw, I would say that you're just looking for a thinly veiled excuse to get rid of me. Is that right?
No. You think badly of me.
Well,
That
every day.
is a
every day.
terrible thing to think. Anyway, let's talk about Pac. So Pac, with that big win in his third match here in Defiant, this time against El Phantasmo. And don't forget, El Phantasmo had some pretty strong words for Pac going into that match at Lights Out last Wednesday, saying that no, Pac, it's not an honor for El Phantasmo to face Pac. It's the other way around, because El Phantasmo nowadays one of the leading lights in light heavyweight wrestling all around the world. Well, Pac put that challenge to bed, defeating El Phantasmo with the red arrow. And interestingly, we saw some very strong words from Pac on Loaded this Sunday as well, where he says he's going to be back in Defiant in June, and he is sick of what he calls a lack of competition in Defiant, and now says he is going after the Defiant World Championship. So Rampage needs to have one eye looking over his shoulder for the bastard who is coming after him.
And don't forget as well that Pac is now, he mentioned it on Loaded, Pac is now 3 wins from 3 matches here in Defiant. What an incredible way to start your career in Defiant Wrestling. There's no way that Pac can be overlooked. I mean, El Phantasmo is no slouch. El Phantasmo is one of the finest high flyers of his generation, and there was some validity to some of the points that he raised last week on Loaded, but in the end, on pay-per-view in front of the entire world, Pac was the one who got the victory, and I think he has every right, Pac does, to say, and make demands, by the way, and say, I am coming for the Defiant World Heavyweight Championship. Why shouldn't a wrestler as celebrated as Pac is aim for the top? And what a match that would be. You talk about...
You know what I was going to say? I tell you what's most interesting as well about Pac's victory over Phantasmo is that, and I said this on Wednesday during the show, but that was the first of those 3 matches where he hasn't been in Newcastle. So Pac was always going to have a rabid crowd behind him in his favour in those first 2 matches against David Starr and Robbie X. And that was like having an extra man in your corner. But this time, Pac was in a crowd that was at best 50-50 towards him. I would say there was probably more Phantasmo fans actually than there were Pac fans. And yet in a more hostile environment, Pac, and against an opponent who has been on a hell of a roll, not just in Defiant, but in other companies around the world as well, Pac, despite all of that, came through. And for those reasons, I think it was his biggest challenge yet, and yet he won again and won so and did so pretty decisively.
It's what Pac does. You know, when you put an obstacle in this man's path, he finds a way to overcome it. And I said at Lights Out that Pac, the Dragon Gate, Open the Dream Gate champion, he now perhaps has opened a new gate, a gateway and a path to that Defiant World Heavyweight Championship. Now, when I said that, I didn't know what was to come on Loaded. But Pac, you know, there was no way. I'm not going to claim that I was clever for thinking that, by the way, because when you look at Pac, he screams world champion. He's just awesome as a professional wrestler. He has an
but here's
aura
the thing. Yep, hang on though. But here's the thing. You're talking about. You just said about whatever obstacles you put in his way, he gets through them. Well, what if you put Rampage in his way? Oof. Because that, you know, assuming Rampage is still the champion come June, when Pac says he's going to turn his focus to that Defiant World Championship, well, that's a hell of an obstacle. You know, that is pretty much the biggest obstacle that Defiant Wrestling could put in Pac's way. And so what happens then? I mean, I can't begin to think what happens if we see Pac v Rampage.
And we also don't know. You know, Rampage, something else came out of him thanks to Rory Coyle. That wasn't, at Lights Out, that wasn't the wrestler Rampage. That was a monster inside Rampage that we saw manifest before our very eyes and inflict this severe beating on Rory Coyle en route to becoming the new champ. Who knows if that's going to stick around? We don't know. We haven't heard from Rampage yet. He's currently enjoying the spoils of victory, but Rampage could now have a bloodlust. So to your point, Bradshaw, if Pac goes one-on-one with Rampage, Will we see Rampage, the wrestler, the old Rampage, or are we going to see this new Rampage that Rory Coyle brought to the fore?
Well, there hasn't been any kind of official announcement, but I do know that Rampage is going to be in Newcastle this weekend for Loaded. So I expect that short silence we've had from the champion since last Wednesday will be short-lived, and I'm pretty sure we will hear from Rampage on Loaded this Sunday from 8 p.m. on the Defiant Wrestling YouTube channel. So hold that thought, because I'm sure that will be coming. This past Sunday on Loaded, by the way, another piece of good news, aside from Rampage being our new champion, Simon Miller has been cleared to compete again. So he's resigned as the assistant to the general manager, and obviously now going to turn his attention to the men who have wronged him in the recent past, in particular H.T. Drake, who tried to cut that return short before it could even get going on Sunday by attacking Simon Miller during that speech in ring on Loaded. Of course, Prince Amin, or General Amin rather, and Adam Foster came to Miller's rescue. I think Drake is terrified. I think Drake is absolutely terrified of a healthy Simon Miller, because I think he knows that Simon Miller could tear him apart.
I don't think that Drake has anything to worry about in that respect now, because after he smashed Simon Miller's shoulder again with that wrench, I don't think there's any hope in hell that Simon Miller will be 100% physically. He can't be. There's no way. That is another setback for Simon Miller on his road to recovery. And listen, Simon Miller wants to believe in this dream that he has, that he can one day become a champion. He can become a champion physically with a championship belt around his waist, not only a champion of the people, and he can have this successful in-ring career. But first and foremost, before he even gets to all that, he's going to have to exorcise the demon that is H.T. Drake, because Drake is certainly not going to sit idly by and watch a YouTuber like Simon Miller steal spots from him on a professional wrestling show. There's no way it's going to happen. Simon Miller is going to have more enemies than he does have friends in that locker room, and H.T. Drake is leading the pack.
We've had a question on this, by the way, again using that hashtag #WeAreDefiant. Alex Jones has tweeted in and is asking, is Simon Miller a future world champion?
Oh my God. Now, I happened to reply to that tweet, and all I said was very succinctly, only serious questions, please.
Well, why is that not a serious proposition? Why can't Simon Miller go on to be a world champion? If he can stay healthy, if he can avoid injury for a prolonged period of time, he's got the crowd support, he's obviously got the physique, he's a student of professional wrestling. I don't see why he can't. I mean, obviously he's not there yet, but he could develop into someone who is able to challenge for big championships.
Do you not think that that is a colossal insult to the new Defiant World Heavyweight Champion Rampage, considering the decades of hard toil, graft and training that Rampage has had to go through in his life and career? You know, he's been all over the world.
I'm not insulting Rampage. No, sorry, I'm going to interrupt. I'm not. You can't. I'm not insulting Rampage. I'm not saying, oh, Simon Miller could beat Rampage tomorrow. Of course he couldn't. I'm saying at some point in the future, Simon Miller, if he continues to work hard and continues to develop, could be someone who is on world championship level. I don't think there's anything controversial or insulting to anyone about suggesting that.
But this isn't even a question of could Simon Miller beat Rampage. This is, what does it take to get to a man like Rampage's level? And I'm telling you, it takes unbelievable dedication. You have to devote your entire life to becoming a success like Rampage is. Simon Miller is right at the start of his wrestling career, and okay, in fits and starts before his shoulder injury got in the way, Simon Miller was impressive. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I'm not jealous of the physical shape that Miller is in, but he has a long road ahead of him. A long road. The first speed bump is H.T. Drake. Then, if he can overcome that, we look at what's next. But in terms of a world championship, be serious. Simon Miller is nowhere near it. You'd be as well saying, I'm going to be the world champion.
I'm not saying he's anywhere near it. Why? I don't know why you're taking such offence. I'm not saying that Simon Miller is close to being a world champion. I'm just saying, you just mentioned that he's got a long road ahead of him, which I agree with. I'm saying at one point in the distant future, maybe, could Simon Miller find that road takes him to a world championship? And I don't understand why that's a totally impossible thing. Or are you agreeing with Drake, where Drake says that that Miller has absolutely no place being in the professional wrestling business? He's just a YouTuber trying to play at being a wrestler. Is that your position? Because that's what Drake's is.
Well, HT Drake firmly believes in those words, and there is conviction and merit behind that argument, because from Drake's perspective, Simon Miller built a career on YouTube, talking about wrestling, not actually doing it inside the ring, and then all of a sudden he wants to play wrestler, as Drake said. So I can understand why Drake is upset at what Simon Miller is trying to achieve, but from an outsider's perspective, Simon Miller, yes, he does have attributes. Yes, he does have tools, God-given tools, and yes, he has worked hard to get to this point. But that road is long, it's winding, and it's fraught with danger, because there are more men in that locker room than HT Drake who will want to see Simon Miller fail. So in terms of the World Championship, it could happen, but it's going to take years.
Then we agree. So what's the problem?
We're not agreeing. We're not agreeing.
You agreed with me. You agreed with what I'm saying.
I'm not agreeing with what you said, but listen, Simon Miller is obviously talented. Simon Miller is obviously a driven human being. Simon Miller could be a worthwhile professional wrestler, but we don't know yet. We don't know yet, because HT Drake came along, injured that shoulder, put Miller on the shelf. He had this distraction as the assistant general manager, and now all of a sudden people are popping up on Twitter as soon as Miller announces his comeback, and they're asking, do you think he could be world champion? It's ridiculous.
So you agree. All right. Well, let's talk about the tag team division. You are in some weird mood today. Tag team division, let's talk about that, because we now know that this Sunday on Loaded, Aussie Open, the former champions, the longest reigning tag team champions in Defiant wrestling history, will get their rematch, a well-deserved rematch given the circumstances of the previous match, against the Defiant tag team champions, SCC, the South Coast Connection. There's other things I want to talk about that have been going on in the tag team division as well, but can Aussie Open do a rampage, so to speak, and very quickly regain a championship that they held for a long time?
Well, Aussie Open, almost had a year-long reign as Defiant Tag Team Champions, and you and I were both taken aback by their success. They seemed to get stronger and stronger the bigger the challenge got, but then along came the South Coast Connection. And ever since the SCC won those championships, they have been fine, upstanding, young, respectful gentlemen, and they have shown the way for a new era in tag team wrestling here in Defiant.
You do know I'm not going to take that bait, by the way, because I know what you're doing.
And what am I doing?
You're trying to bait me into a reaction. I'm not going to do it, but go on.
I'm not trying to bait anything. All I'm saying is that the SCC are fine champions. No one can deny that. They beat Aussie Open, who themselves were fine champions.
We can deny that the SCC are fine champions, but anyway.
Well, if I can be allowed the privilege of speaking uninterrupted, I have a point to make.
Do you? Well, we'll maybe get to it sometime in the next 10 minutes.
Well, come on. My point, Dave Bradshaw, is that the SCC are now the hunted. The Aussie Open, they were so used to being the hunted. They're not used to being the hunters. And I believe they're going to find it very, very tough to go into a match against the SCC knowing that Aussie Open need to beat the South Coast Connection, not the other way around. Now, I know what you're going to say. You're going to say that I'm advocating that the SCC take a cheap disqualification or something like that. That's not what I'm saying. All I'm saying is Aussie Open are now in uncharted terrain for them. They haven't been the challengers for the longest time, and it's going to be tough for them to slip back into that mindset so quickly. This is SCC's chance to prove that they are the tag team in Defiant.
It's not what you're saying, though, is it? You're not saying SCC, if they did take a cheap disqualification loss or a count out, that they should be ashamed of themselves. I haven't heard you say that.
Well, why would they be ashamed of themselves? A victory's a victory.
What if they lose by disqualification? What if they just get themselves counted out? What if they run away?
Listen, as far as I'm concerned, if you're the tag team champions and you lose by disqualification, it's actually a win because you keep those championships.
All right. Let's talk about the other teams in the tag team division. There was, of course, a big tag team match at Lights Out last Wednesday, and it was actually, I think, a pretty crucial win for Jody Fleisch and Johnny Storm, two British wrestling legends, but they had to win. They really had to defeat the Billingtons, the dynamic duo, for all of their impressive appearances, impressive performances so far here in Defiant. They are still teenagers, right? And Fleisch and Storm had already had a loss here in Defiant. They absolutely needed to defeat the Billingtons at Lights Out, and they got it done. So are Fleisch and Storm now right up there in that tag team championship discussion?
I would say so. Now, it's no disgrace for the young Billington boys in losing to Johnny Storm and Jody Fleisch. We're talking about British wrestling royalty, and that's exactly what Johnny and Jody are. But you made the point, Bradshaw, how pivotal this victory was for Storm and Fleisch, because if they lost to the dynamic duo, all these people who tune into Defiant Wrestling on a regular basis around the globe, they would have started talking. You know, are Storm and Fleisch finished? Do they have what it takes to hang with the young up-and-comers on the UK scene? Well, all that goes away now because Johnny and Jody have that win. They've proved why they belong in Defiant Wrestling. But let me answer a question by asking a question of my own. What do you think is next for the Billingtons? The dynamic duo, they were red hot. They've had all this buzz surrounding them. They've had the support of legends like Marty Jones. But now they've been defeated by Johnny Storm and Jody Fleisch on a worldwide pay-per-view. What do you think is next for the Dynamics?
Well, I think they will feel like it's the end of the world. You know, to lose a big match like that, I'm sure, and that's partly because of their inexperience. They're going to think, oh no, this is, you know, people are going to think we're frauds, that we don't actually deserve to be in Defiant. But I think it was, in reality, in the cold light of day, I think it was much more of a must-win for Fleisch and Storm than it was for the Billingtons, actually, because the Billingtons, anyone reasonable, anyone rational will say about the Billingtons, you know what, you're supposed to lose that match. But you're supposed to lose to someone as experienced as a Jody Fleisch or a Johnny Storm. And you have years, hopefully, decades, hopefully, in front of you in your career. So the Billingtons shouldn't lose hope. They are, between them, combined, you know, younger than either one of Storm or Fleisch by a decade or so. I mean, that's the age difference we're talking about. You know, they are so early in their career that it is something that they will absolutely bounce back from. And one of the things you have to learn, I think, as a professional wrestler or an athlete in any discipline, is that you won't win every time. And so far, the Billingtons, when it has been a fair contest, have pretty much been successful all of the time. I use that caveat because there was a couple of occasions against SCC where maybe that wasn't the case. But I think they'll recover. Interestingly, though, they are going to have to recover quickly because it's not just the teams we've been talking about who are involved in what is a very competitive tag team division in Defiant right now, because there was a tag team match as well on Loaded this past Sunday. Two relatively new teams. Well, in one case, it was a debut. Tuck Shop, Jack Sexsmith and Visage versus, now what are we calling them, Ren Ben?
Yes, Ren Ben. Now, that idiot Benji would like you to believe that tag team are called Benshaw, but that's just preposterous.
Benshaw does sound better, doesn't it?
What? No,
It's
Ren Ben has a ring to it.
No, I don't think so. Anyway, Connor Renshaw and Benji, who somehow against the odds, picked up the victory over Tuckshop. And having said that, though, it wasn't exactly a victory that was without a bit of taintedness to it, because Renshaw did take a shortcut to get the win. Nonetheless, though, a victory, and even if we might be questioning Renshaw's intentions in suddenly being all pally-pally with Benji and forming a tag team with him, they did get a win. And so that puts them on the map as well.
And what a win it was. And it was all because of big Connor Renshaw. Now, I told you he was one to watch, Bradshaw, and now that little mutt Benji can strap his Magnificent Seven briefcase to the wagon and follow his new partner's lead. Now, I'm going to go back on myself a little bit, because I have not guessed, I have predicted that Benji, okay, he's the Magnificent Seven briefcase holder, but apart from that, I've predicted that he will not be a success here in Defiant Wrestling. But if he follows the example of Connor Renshaw, then wow, he could be a success. We could be looking with Renben, we could be looking at a future tag team championship winning team. Connor Renshaw is some physical specimen.
Wait a second. Benji, if you look objectively at this, Benji has so far had a much more successful Defiant Wrestling career than Renshaw. I mean, first of all, he's beaten him one-on-one. Don't forget Benji's beaten Renshaw when they had a match before Renshaw was pretending to be his friend. Benji won the Magnificent Seven match, which Renshaw was in. So I don't think there's any possible way you can say. And of course, Benji's beaten Martin Kirby as well, and nearly beat him twice. Second time with the internet title on the line. So I don't think there's any way you can say that Renshaw has had a better start to his career in Defiant than Benji. Even for you, that's a stretch, isn't it?
But listen, if Connor Renshaw and Benji walk into the same room at the same time, who do you think everyone's going to be looking at? They're going to think that Benji's there to carry Renshaw's bags. That's just a fact of life. Connor Renshaw has presence. He has height for a start, and he doesn't look like a little puppy. Benji, he doesn't have any of those attributes. He's a fluke, a flash in the pan, and I cannot comprehend why people continually shower him with praise. And that includes you, Bradshaw.
Yeah, you know what Benji has that Renshaw doesn't have?
Go for it.
A briefcase. A Magnificent Seven briefcase. And that is why Renshaw is suddenly hanging around with him. Oh, you know that's true.
What is it with you and conspiracy theories,
Go on, admit it. Just admit it. You sound like an idiot when you don't admit the obvious. We all know that Renshaw is pretending to be Benji's friend because he wants to tag along and get the advantage of that Magnificent Seven briefcase.
How do you know that Connor Renshaw just isn't a very nice gentleman who would like to see an unfortunate soul like Benji succeed in life? Why does it always have to be that you see the worst in people?
I don't know. So you don't agree with me then?
No, I don't agree with you. I think we should let this one play out before we jump to ridiculous accusations like that.
You are entertaining me today. This has been great. We're almost out of time, sadly, but I do want to have a quick look ahead to Loaded this Sunday. We've talked about a couple of the matches that are coming up. We know that SCC will have to defend and probably lose, I would hope, the tag team titles to Aussie Open. Lizzie Styles, who we talked about earlier, the women's champion, she is going to have an open challenge. So we don't know who Lizzie Styles' opponent will be. Hopefully it's someone great. We could have 2 title changes this week.
2 massive title changes. We did a lights out.
Yeah, tag titles, women's title. We're going to hear from Rampage, we assume, as well. And how about this match? Chris Brooks versus Robbie X on Loaded this Sunday. Now, Robbie has to really get back to winning ways because he had that brief boost in confidence by beating Man Like Doris and earning that match against Mark Haskins. But Haskins won that match at Lights Out. So Robbie X has to really get back on the wagon, so to speak, and find a way to win. Brooks, not only is Brooks clearly got this chip on his shoulder that is quite unpleasant, but it's not just affecting him, it's affecting other people, namely Laura Di Matteo, who we saw losing to Natalie Sykes on Loaded this past Sunday. Di Matteo, I don't think has got over that altercation with Chris Brooks a couple of weeks ago on Loaded, and I wonder whether Di Matteo still has some work to do to get herself in a position where she can get past what happened with Chris Brooks.
Di Matteo is quite clearly and visibly, when you look at her face on this past week's Loaded. That look of confidence that she had previously, it seems to have vanished. But going up against the debuting Natalie Sykes, a lot of people thought this was going to be an easy win for Laura Di Matteo, myself included, and probably you as well, Dave. But Di Matteo's promising start to life in Defiant, it's gone wrong. She needs a rethink. Now, as for Chris Brooks, he's one very disgruntled human being, isn't happy with his lot here in Defiant. Robbie X going to have to bounce back after losing to Mark Haskins at Lights Out, as you said. There's so many combustible elements right now, but you're right, there is this strange link between what happened with Chris Brooks to what is going wrong now for Laura Di Matteo. It's just complete chaos in her career right now, whereas previously it looked like Di Matteo might be a future women's champion.
Well, we'll see. Yeah, but Di Matteo has gone from a 3-0 starting record here in Defiant to now 3-2. She's lost 2 in a row, and it is, at least in part, I think, due to Chris Brooks. So Brooks has a lot to answer for. He's going to be one-on-one with Robbie X this Sunday on Loaded. And of course, as I said at the start of the show, we are now turning our attention to the 3rd annual No Regrets. It's happening in Manchester on May 25th. You can join us there in person if you'd like to. Tickets available at wearedefiant.com/tickets. And there's still tickets available for the Loaded tapings this Saturday at Northumbria Students' Union in Newcastle. So again, wearedefiant.com/tickets if you want to join us in Newcastle this coming Saturday, or for No Regrets featuring that No Regrets Rumble May 25th in Manchester. Big episode of Loaded coming up this Sunday. Don't forget you can follow me on Twitter at Dave Bradshaw. How can people follow you if they are so inclined?
Well, if you want to be in my life, then I would say follow me on Twitter and or Instagram at Top Class Kennedy. And can I just say something, Bradshaw? I'm really digging being a free man. You know, I can now leave the toilet seat up. I can leave crumbs on the couch, okay. My butler then tidies them away. I can even listen to my entire collection of Busted records full blast without anyone judging me. Don't you laugh. You know that what I go to school for is an absolute tune.
Even you know what? Actually, I'm actually a big Busted fan.
Oh, I hate them now.
I'm not even going to mock you for that.
Well,
I think Busted are one of the great underrated bands.
Taylor Hanson wasn't a big Busted fan. She said that they were the worst thing to happen to pop rock music since Hanson. Now, that's a disgusting thing. Okay, I said that. But anyway, I'm a free man, Bradshaw. I'm free as the wind. I'm now allowed to break without opening a window or spraying some Febreze. Taylor Hanson was such a buzzkill. I'm so glad she's out of my life. But yes, as I said at the top of this little segment, if you like, if you want to be in my life, at Top Class Kennedy is where you can make it happen.
There you go. And he's playing the field, which is why he was wearing a jacket that made him look like a dodgy Valentine's date last Wednesday. We'll see you in Newcastle this Sunday for Loaded. We will be back with the ReLoaded podcast, of course, next week as well. In the meantime, thank you for tuning in. For James R. Kennedy, this is Dave Bradshaw, and we will see you next week on the ReLoaded podcast.